I'm Angi Gonzalez with the New York 1 Minute. Lawmakers finalize a deal in Albany to legalize recreational marijuana across the state. The bill is expected to be voted on in the coming days and could go into effect next year. A 37-year-old woman is allegedly slapped in the face and told to go back to her country in an incident being investigated as an anti-Asian hate crime. It happened inside the East 51st Street, Lexington Avenue subway station. Police are investigating the fatal stabbing of 17-year-old Gerardo Rivas in Washington Heights. No arrests have been made, but a GoFundMe page has been created to help cover funeral costs. Senator Schumer is calling on lawmakers in Washington to close federal loopholes that allow what are called ghost guns to be bought and sold. He calls them a rising threat. And we're tracking stormy conditions. Thunderstorms are likely tonight near 8 p.m. with wind advisories in effect until 6 p.m. tomorrow. Today's top stories are coming up, but first, a quick check of your forecast. A much nicer day is ahead to start off the work week. Bright skies and temperatures in the 50s are expected. It's going to be windy with gusts up to 40 miles per hour. Looking ahead to the rest of the week, we're going to stay dry before another round of rain is going to be moving through later in the week, possibly Wednesday into Thursday. Things are going to be turning cooler but drier for the end of the week into the weekend. Your next weather check comes in just 10 minutes. Thousands of dollars are being raised to support the family of a teen who was fatally stabbed in Washington Heights. Police are still looking for the person responsible for the attack. Now, authorities say they got a call just after 2 p.m. on Saturday afternoon about an assault near West 181st Street and St. Nicholas Avenue. Now, you can see some of the scene in this Citizen app video. Now, when cops arrived, they found 17-year-old Gerardo Rivas with a stab wound to his torso. He was later pronounced dead at a local hospital. Police say that he got into an argument with his attacker. A GoFundMe page has now been set up to help his family with funeral and memorial costs. In the first couple of hours after it went up, more than $10,000 has already been raised. Police are searching for a man they say is responsible for an anti-Asian hate crime in Manhattan. Police say just before 9 p.m. on Saturday inside the East 51st Street and Lexington Avenue subway station that this man approached a 37-year-old woman and hit her in the face. Police say that he then allegedly called her an anti-Asian slur and yelled, quote, "Go back to your country. This is because of you." Now, the victim was not seriously injured and refused medical attention, and the man took off. Jacob Blake, the man who was shot 7 times by a police officer in Wisconsin last year, has filed an excessive force lawsuit against the officer who shot him. Now, the August shooting left 29-year-old Blake paralyzed from the waist down. The lawsuit says that he will continue to suffer physical and emotional damages from the injury. Officer Rustin Shesky is the only defendant named in the lawsuit that was filed in federal court. The Kenosha County District Attorney announced in January that neither Shesky nor the 2 other officers involved would be charged. The shooting occurred after the officers responded to a domestic incident, and Shesky claimed that he was afraid Blake was trying to kidnap a child while fleeing the scene. Senator Charles Schumer is calling attention to an issue that he says poses a rising threat. They are called ghost guns. Under current law, components to make a ghost gun can be purchased and then assembled by the buyer themselves, circumventing the background check process. Now, these types of guns don't have a serial number and have been used in a number of mass shootings before. But now Senator Schumer is calling on lawmakers in Washington to close the federal legal loopholes that allow these kinds of guns to be bought and sold.
When the bad people can't buy guns at a gun shop because they need to do a background check, they can order these kits in the mail or buy them in stores, and no one asks any questions. Close the ghost gun loophole, and we will save lives.
Now, Schumer says New York Attorney General Letitia James has already taken action to prevent the flow of ghost guns here in the state, but points out that it is possible to buy one from another state and then have it shipped here. Schumer adds that he's hopeful the Biden administration will move forward quickly to close the federal loophole. Lawmakers finalize a deal to legalize recreational marijuana for those 21 and older in New York and allow adults to keep up to 3 marijuana plants per person in their home. The late Saturday night agreement between Governor Cuomo, Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie comes after a tentative deal on a marijuana bill that was reached last week. The state legislature is expected to vote on the bill in the coming days. It is expected to go into effect sometime next year, and that's when people would be able to buy it. As lawmakers prepare to vote on the bill, we spoke with an attorney and social activist, Anthony Posada, on the impacts of marijuana legalization across the state, especially what this will mean on future interactions with police.
One of the biggest things it really accomplishes, and there's a lot, but one of them is the way it's going to treat the odor of marijuana, so that in and of itself is not going to be used as reasonable cause for a police officer to engage in a search or believe that they have the legal authority to stop somebody on the basis of that odor. And so that is very, very big, because for all of these years where marijuana has been criminalized, that has been one of the biggest reasons and justifications that police use to search and engage in unlawful conduct.
Now, Posada also says the deal would remove convictions of past marijuana offenders, allowing them greater ease entering the workforce and getting access to government assistance. New York and New Jersey are back on the top of the list of U.S. states with the highest rates of COVID-19 infections. New Jersey is now #1 in new infections per capita, reporting 647 new cases for every 100,000 residents. New York is #2 with 548. Nationwide, the U.S. is averaging nearly 62,000 cases a day, up from 54,000 just 2 weeks ago. But it's still not nearly as bad as a year ago when the pandemic first hit, or during the spike that we saw in January. Even though more and more people are getting vaccinated, there are concerns that both states may have started reopening things like movie theaters, restaurants, and arenas too soon. There are also more contagious variants circulating more widely. President Biden says he thinks people are also letting their guard down and hopes to have a better sense of what's happening after a meeting with his pandemic team on Monday. The CDC reports about 143 million COVID-19 doses have been administered in the U.S. as of Sunday. That's about 3.3 million more doses given since Saturday. The 7-day rolling average is about 2.7 million shots in arms given every day. The latest data shows a total of 94 million people have received at least one dose of the vaccine. That's just over 28% of the population. 52 million Americans have now been fully vaccinated. That's about 15% of the total U.S. population. Here are the latest coronavirus numbers for the state. Currently, the statewide COVID-19 positivity rate stands at 3.52%. There are more than 4,500 hospitalizations from COVID-19 across the state. Cuomo's office says that COVID patients in ICUs have dropped to 877 people, a new low since December the 6th. 64 New Yorkers, however, died from COVID-19 on Saturday. And here in the city, there have been more than 3,300 new cases of COVID-19 and 253 new hospitalizations. Overall, the city's 7-day average positivity rate sits at 5.83%. Meanwhile, the governor's office says that a total of 8.8 million vaccine doses have been administered statewide. 194,000 doses were administered over the past 24 hours. Now, just over 29% of New Yorkers have received at least one vaccine dose, and 16% are fully vaccinated. Bodega owners in the state are elated that 1,000 Johnson & Johnson vaccines are going to be made available immediately for them and their workers. At a news conference, bodega advocate and mayoral candidate Fernando Mateo called it long overdue. Now, he's urging all bodega workers to get the shot as soon as possible and says that they will request more once they're all gone. Mateo says that it was insulting that bodegas were considered essential, but that their employees themselves were not able to get the shot until now.
A lot of our members died because of that. A lot of families were destroyed, and a lot of bodega owners had to go out of business, had to close because of this pandemic.
It's very dangerous being behind the counter. You know that we have very close contact with people. So I think having our bodegas owner and employee vaccinated, I think that it is less risk to get the infection.
Now, if you're a bodega worker and would like to schedule an appointment, you can send an email to either of those two addresses there at the bottom of your screen. More news plus your weather on the One's forecast are coming up right after the break. I'm Angi Gonzalez with the New York 1 Minute. Lawmakers finalize a deal in Albany to legalize recreational marijuana across the state. The bill is expected to be voted on in the coming days and go into effect next year. A 37-year-old woman is allegedly slapped in the face and told to go back to her country during an incident being investigated as an anti-Asian hate crime. It happened inside the East 51st Street, Lexington Avenue subway station. Police are investigating the fatal stabbing of a 17-year-old in Washington Heights. No arrests have been made, but a GoFundMe page has been set up to help cover funeral costs. Senator Schumer is calling on lawmakers in Washington to help close federal loopholes that allow what are called ghost guns to be bought and sold. He calls them a rising threat. And a line of thunderstorms is rolling through the city at this hour. A wind advisory is in effect until 6 p.m. tomorrow. Secure anything that you have that may blow away. More on our top stories in just a moment, but first, a look at the forecast. It's time now for a look at your weather on the Ones. Showers are going to end gradually throughout the night. Lows are going to remain in the low 40s. It's going to remain windy with gusts up to 40 miles per hour at times. Now for Monday, we're going to see bright skies and dry weather take over. Highs are going to be in the mid 50s with breezy conditions. Tomorrow night is going to be dry and chilly. Lows are going to fall back into the low 40s. The first half of the week looks pleasant with dry and mild weather, but there is some morning rain expected on Thursday, along with much cooler temperatures. Your next weather check comes in just 10 minutes. Now to a look at the coronavirus around the world. Mexico's government reports that the country's COVID-19 death toll may be 60% higher than previously reported. The new health ministry report suggests more than 321,000 people have likely died from COVID-19 since the start of the pandemic, rather than 201,000 reported just a day before. Meantime, England will lift its stay-at-home order on Monday, a lockdown that's been ongoing since January 4th. This according to UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who says that the public must still remain cautious as the country reopens. This means starting Monday, 6 people or 2 households can now meet outside, including private gardens, and organized sports can also resume. Now, many shops are still going to remain closed until at least April the 12th. And Albania started a mass vaccination campaign on Sunday ahead of the summer tourism season. This comes after the country acquired 192,000 doses of the Chinese coronavirus vaccine Sinovac earlier this week. Vaccinations were slow to roll out in the Balkan country, with Albania receiving less than 100,000 Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Sputnik V doses. So far, 65,000 Albanians have been vaccinated. Brazil follows the U.S. with the most recorded coronavirus cases and deaths of any country. Now, one health expert predicts that the South American country could exceed the U.S.'s death toll by the end of the year, as highly contagious variants are currently sweeping the nation and its healthcare system is on the verge of collapse. Brazil is averaging 2,400 virus deaths a day, with some days nearing 4,000. Experts there warn that Brazil faces even greater danger if severe lockdowns are not put in place, since their president has consistently downplayed the virus and even spread conspiracy theories. Lockdown measures were implemented last year, but President Bolsonaro's administration did not strictly enforce them. Last week, the country surpassed 300,000 deaths and now accounts for a quarter of the global death toll. The U.S. recorded nearly 550,000 COVID-19 deaths. The Biden administration is working on a system for people to prove that they've been vaccinated against the coronavirus. The so-called Vax Pass or vaccine passport could be used by individuals in the workplace, school, or whether they're traveling internationally or anywhere that they choose. According to a senior White House official, multiple agencies are involved in the planning of this passport. The travel industry in particular has been calling on the federal government to develop a universal vaccine passport system. Travel sites Airbnb and the RBO are reporting a boom in online reservations. Vrbo, or vacation rentals by owner, is said to be off to its best start in a quarter century. Stocks for Expedia, Vrbo's owner, have soared more than 30%, and shares of Airbnb are up more than 20% this year as well. Analysts say this boom is because many consumers feel ready to travel again, with the end of the pandemic hopefully in sight. Now, bookings with travel sites like Travelocity, Orbitz, and Hotwire are starting to bounce back as well. The famous cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. are expected to hit their peak bloom next week. According to the National Park Service, they estimate that the bloom will happen sometime between April 2nd and April 5th. The blossoms, originally gifted to the U.S. by Japan in 1912, remain one of the city's biggest tourist attractions. While the National Park Service plans to keep the area open, it could close if too many people show up. They encourage people to enjoy the cherry blossoms virtually instead. Cardinal Timothy Dolan delivered an in-person mass on Sunday morning to celebrate Palm Sunday at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Palm Sunday marks the beginning of the final week of Lent, known as Holy Week, leading up to Easter Sunday. This was the first Palm Sunday Mass delivered by Cardinal Dolan in nearly 2 years. The cathedral was closed this time last year due to the pandemic, leaving Christians to watch Palm Sunday services online. Palm Sunday commemorates Jesus' entry into Jerusalem a week before his resurrection. While the Mass usually draws hundreds from all over the world, Sunday's ceremony was limited to 50% capacity with social distancing and mask wearing required. Cardinal Dolan spoke about how special it was to conduct Mass with worshipers present.
We learned the painful way this past year that not only do you need bread and wine, not only do you need the Bible, you need people for the Mass, okay, and the sacraments. So it is so good to have them back, although we're still, as you see, we're still keeping the 50% restriction, and we're doing all the sanitary requirements, and I'm glad we are. But that is really good. And then secondly, I think we need it more than ever because we've been through a year of Good Friday, and so it's good. It'll be good next Sunday to celebrate life and hope and light.
Pope Francis also celebrated Mass on Sunday to a nearly empty St. Peter's Basilica for a second year. Francis spoke about the need to care for one another during the pandemic, especially the poor. Authorities are still working on freeing that massive container ship stuck in the Suez Canal that's been blocking traffic since Tuesday. Now, one option is lightening the massive load, but that would require floating a crane out into the water in order to remove the containers. Now, Egypt doesn't have a mobile crane that could reach the heights required, but preparations have been made to bring in the necessary equipment from other countries. Other options include digging closer to the front of the ship. Authorities say that a combination of technical issues and human error may have caused the ship to get stuck. The canal is losing $14 million a day in transit fees, while billions of dollars of cargo is backlogged. Over 350 ships are stuck on both sides of this ship that's stuck. Now, some have decided to go the long way around Africa, but lurking pirates make that a risky move. Millions of people in central Tennessee are dealing with deadly heavy rains and flash flooding that have claimed 4 lives already. Nashville fire crews rescued at least 130 people from vehicles, apartments, and houses overnight. Storms produced the second largest 2-day rainfall on record, with nearly 7 inches of rain so far since Saturday morning. Authorities confirm that 4 people have died in the floods, including one man who was found inside of his car near a raging creek behind a local Walmart. That's all for this half hour of news. Stay with us for the latest on all your top stories and your weather on the ones in our next half hour.